I have a degree in psychology. I guess it's time to finally use it. Let me take 3 guesses about you. You played Dead to Rights 2? Am I good or am I good? You hated it, finding it repetitive, shallow, and completely devoid of any of the personality the first one had. And lastly, and most importantly, late at night, you found your thoughts drifting away towards it while asking yourself, am I missing something? Is there a way to understand what the game was going for and thus enjoying it as intended? I know the last part is bullshit. Even I forgot instantly about the game after finishing it. Then later I was showing my friend Jet Li Rise to Honor. My friend Jet Li. And after we punched and Uncharted for 30 minutes, we got to 5 minutes of shooting and I exclaimed, "This is really fun! I wish we had a full game of this." This unlocked my memory from 6 months earlier when I played Dead to Rights 2, and here we are now. But first, I learned my lesson from last time. 16 minutes to get to the point. I think I can shorten that massively. Story. Graphics. Very average for 2005, but Dead to Rights 1 looked pretty bad for 2002, so I guess it's an improvement. The only notable thing is that the developer is called
Widescreen Games,
while I did not manage to run it at more than 720p. Sound. Awful all around. The music I like sometimes, but it's 10 seconds on loop. Guns completely lack bass. And I've never heard voices this badly mixed on a PS2 game. I mean, congratulations to them for creating a game using the first microphone ever made. Gameplay. That's the focus of the video, and that's the part I'm gonna try to redeem. Now I know what you'll say.
Okay. Do not redeem! Do not redeem! Do not redeem!
It's not worth it, everyone hates it already. Well, this paragraph was initially more defensive, and then a third very negative review of Dead to Rights 2 hit YouTube, which had this to say.
But it does have its defenders. There are those that say it's a lot of dumb, turn-your-brain-off fun, and having now finished it firsthand, anyone who thinks that shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Hearing this had the opposite effect on me. It put me into a zen state. Any semblance of shame for working many months on this video disappeared, and I found a new angle, a new hook for the audience. Yes, I like Infernal. Yes, I like Headhunter Redemption, and yes, I do love Dead to Rights 2, so I guess you could say I'm incapable of objectivity with old and lame third-person shooters. But I hate 25 to Life, I hate Bad Day LA, and I even hate Shellshock, at least the gameplay. I heard the story gets good. So I do have some standards. And if the angle of redemption doesn't interest you, then exploring those standards should be compelling. At least it would be for me if the roles were reversed. And that's it. It took me
3 minutes and 12 seconds
to get to the point. I can finally build upon that point swiftly and without pointless meandering. So let's hear my life story. I was born, then I was playing Max Payne 3 for the 3rd time, and I was finally able to enjoy it. It always felt like a good game, but it did not feel amazing to play. This time around, I figured out what to do to unlock its full potential. More specifically, the opposite of what I did the first 2 times. First of all, medium difficulty, brain dead. So I went higher. Secondly, if you ever felt useless, remember that there is a cover system in a game where you can leap through the air in slow motion. So I did not fall for the psyop for the 3rd time, and I only used the cover system when I was in situations I wouldn't wish on my biggest enemy, a guy named Cosmin, if you were wondering. Moreover, I was mostly shooting from the hip, flanking medium-range targets whenever possible, once again only reserving aiming down sights for special situations, since I always saw Max Payne like a running gun shooter. Also, I disabled hit markers. I'm not even gonna defend that choice. If your shooter needs hit markers to be satisfying, you need better animations. Definitely not the case here. And even slow motion and shoot dodging I only used when it would either make for a cool moment or for preserving health, rather than preemptively on most occasions. These were all diegetic changes, and they worked. The game was much more engaging now, but something was still missing, and I figured out what. I was sometimes rolling instead of shoot dodging, but it gave me mixed feelings. On one hand, it kept the flow of combat much more effectively than slowing down time all the time, but on the other hand, it was bound to G by default, which meant that in that half of a second when I needed that roll, there was this interference of me needing to stretch my index or even my thumb if I needed to roll to the right. The two effects cancelled each other. So I brought the roll over to X, which meant that all my possible choices now had virtually no interface between brain and hands, and I could think as if I was there instead of also having to visualize the keyboard. I know controllers solve this problem, but then again I also love being able to be accurate. This will be relevant later. What this experience taught me is that sometimes, if you do some shifts in playstyle that can even be seen as unnatural, you can experience a game in a way better light than if you just followed your instinct. And I felt like I struck gold. I said, wow, if I can enhance the experience of a masterpiece, it means that I can enhance any game. And I did just that. I always wanted to enjoy Fear 2, and knowing that the biggest problem was the shitty enemy spawn points and the aim down sights making the game brain dead, I played with no aim down sights and minimal slow-mo, and it felt like the first game with better graphics. I also leaned into Fear 3's challenge system, which literally tells you how to play in order to have the most fun, and I had a blast. I rejected Dark Sector's cover system and relied on superpowers, and I was finally able to finish the game. I spammed teleport in Infernal and was able to make the video which basically rewired my brain and gave me a much needed direction for this channel. I even managed to make Deep Black Reloaded fun, but that's a story for another time. Thing is, I also did that with Dead to Rights 2, but I did not know or think about what I did. As I said, I instantly forgot about the game. So doing a second playthrough, while trying to reverse engineer why I was having so much fun while everyone else was hating, I realized a lot of things, but I did not know how to organize them into a coherent framework and where to begin my description. Luckily, while writing, I was playing two games which illustrate my point in a very plastic way. Prototype 2 and Mercenaries 2 have a lot in common with Dead to Rights 2. They are sequels, two cult classics, and they brought over mechanical changes which made the combat feel better, but they are universally considered inferior due to a change in tone and inferior writing, less thoughtful design, removal of some key mechanics which made the games more repetitive, and overall being brain dead simple. But then, why did I spend more than half of my playtime of Prototype 2 not even doing missions and feeling like a kid, while after 30 minutes of Mercenaries 2 I'm like, I'm 26, what am I doing? No one over 12 should be allowed to play this. The same feeling, but evil. The key difference is self-expression. The first Prototype was already good with this, but 2 added an improved targeting system which meant that from any height, any terrain and any angle you can attack with different areas of effect, distance and damage, or grab, infect, throw, consume or disguise yourself in a seemingly endless combo of possible choices. The enemies might pose no danger to your life, but neither does a canvas, unless it falls on you when you are on your deathbed. But that doesn't mean that a canvas can't be engaging. All you need to do is let your brain go wild. With Prototype 2, the fun is not in what will the game throw at me, but rather in what will I throw at the game. Look, for me, challenge is key, but this is the only time when I made an exception. Prototype 2 makes killing pedestrians in GTA look as fun as Microsoft Excel. It's peak sandboxing. Mercenaries 2 is certainly better than today's open worlds, but you only have 3 flat options. Shooting until the bar goes empty, then shooting the next guy feels almost the same no matter the weapon, running over a guy, then running over the next guy feels the same no matter the vehicle, and airstriking and explosions, which are way more fun, but in order to replenish you need to go through this Sisyphean task. And I don't know, I don't wanna give too much thought into this, but it gets old so damn fast.
No!
In short, Prototype 2 is like playing chess only against pawns, while Mercenaries 2 is also like playing chess only against pawns, but you also only have pawns. My main thesis is that Dead to Rights 2 is described more like I described Mercenaries 2, but in my experience it was more like Prototype. But to unlock that, you need that flexible attitude towards games that I described earlier. And the starting point is even before booting the game. The default controls on PC are evil. They are spread all throughout the keyboard, you need to be a fucking octopus to play it. So take all the buttons and bring them all together, it makes all the difference. Suddenly, if you feel on the spot that another action is better than what you were going to do on instinct, you don't need to stretch your arms to do it, or play with a controller. We'll get to that, I promise. Until we get to that, I still think that having all the buttons on a flat plane is better neurologically, even if the game doesn't necessitate precision aiming. But I just grew up with PC. I didn't read any research. The second thing to do before starting the game in order to have a good time is putting yourself into the right mood. Interestingly, that is not that intuitive. You see Splinter Cell Conviction and its 30-minute tutorial and know not to expect intense and tactical gameplay. You see Warrior Within and know not to expect Aladdin. But in this case, both games are crime dramas inspired by John Woo with auto-aim and constant movement. It's fair to compare Dead to Rights 1 and 2, right? Actually, if you look beneath the surface, 1 is more similar to Retribution than to 2. It doesn't help that all 3 YouTubers which made negative reviews of 2 had childhood nostalgia for the first one, so on top of having a bond to it, they reinforced that bond by playing, thinking, writing and editing for dozens of hours. And afterwards they played the sequel for the first time in their lives, a sequel which changed a lot about the game, with story and atmosphere having had changes for the worse. The game stood no chance. But personally, I never heard of Dead to Rights until Retribution in 2010, and then afterwards it took me 7 or 8 years for me to even know how its prequels looked like. Does that make me more objective?
Yes?
And now let's talk about the gameplay changes. The more shallow gameplay changes pertain to pacing. The first one felt more like an adventure, where depending on where the story got you, you either brawl, shoot, weightlift, explore, safe crack, do a sex change, etc. While in Dead to Rights 2, all you do is shoot and brawl for a little while. It's the same progression from the first Ratchet & Clank to Deadlocked, but in just 2 games instead of 4. This can be incredibly jarring if you do not realize that the series underwent a change in genre. Everything, rotating weapons, the senseless abundance of enemy spawns, people and objects disappearing after you interact with them, the repetitive music and especially the very short levels that restart after dying point to this being an arcade Japanese style game. The type that gives you a score at the end of a 5-minute level. Shit like Gungrave, 10,000 Bullets, EDF, Piano 3 or Gun Valkyrie. Or if you want a Western example, we got The Club, countless roguelikes, or El Paso Elsewhere. This is a design philosophy made to be enjoyed in small doses, no bigger than 1 hour. I might be a fan of Dead to Rights 2, but I never played more than 6 or 7 levels back to back, which usually total 40 to 50 minutes. If you treat this game like an adventure to be enjoyed in 1 or 2 sittings, you will pull out your hair, just like the YouTubers did. To prove my point, the third reviewer, the one who said I should not be able to vote, did a whole retrospective, and he liked the PSP game Dead to Rights Reckoning a lot more, even though it's just like 2 but with even more Japanese elements, like a scoring system or even shorter levels to be enjoyed in any circumstance, since it's a portable game. So to enjoy this game you need to play it less. Wow, what generous insight. Why am I not working for GameSpot? Oh, you want some insight, you dirty bitch? Okay. All the changes from the first one. Faster speed for both movement and rolling, coupled with smaller levels with more cover, means more flanking and close range combat. The dog is an object in the game instead of an insta-kill animation, meaning that you can coordinate with him. You do more damage during a shoot dodge as opposed to the same amount in the first one, so now you can stack that upon the obvious higher damage at closer ranges in order to preserve more of your ability bar, a fact that correlates well with the speed and level design changes. Also, during shoot dodging and rolling, you can now lock onto enemies that are next to and behind you instead of having to face them, which was a hassle in the first game because you could only strafe and roll laterally, only when you were locked on an enemy. Meaning that if you wanted to do a lateral shoot dodge to both kill the man in front of you from cover, you had to lock onto one beforehand, which opened up to being shot. Otherwise you would jump on facing that direction without the possibility of locking onto them. In Dead to Rights 2, bam! It took me so much to wrap my head around this change. But it is crucial to the fact that after 5 minutes of playing the second one, right after finishing the first, I felt like something's wrong with the much inferior perception that I had compared to how much smoother it feels. Back to the changes. To disarm people, you don't need to be empty-handed. Now you can disarm them on the spot, even while shooting them. You can now roll, shoot dodge, and vault on top of higher ledges and objects, meaning that you have more control on the level of verticality and how you can use that to your advantage. And you can also store explosives for later, instead of having to use them on the spot. But oh no, no more 40-minute intermissions between shootouts. I swear, they need to import all these changes into the first game in order for people attached to it to realize what huge difference they make. But as it is, Dead to Rights 1 is more tactical and realistic. It's not easy to pronounce that word in this context, but it is technically true. You need to manage how much you stay in the open and what enemy you prioritize. While the sequel is faster, it happens mostly at close range, and the satisfaction comes from varying the way you do consecutive kills, swift navigation, and dispensing of the enemies quickly and efficiently. And the review can stop here. It's a game perfect for small 20-minute doses, when you aren't in the mood for something more productive but don't want to waste too much time either. But if you watched my Infernal review, you know I don't play fair. Only after I have promoted the game heavily, I have revealed a mechanic that permeates and destroys it. In that case, it was the fact that for ammo and health, you had to sit through a long animation. In this case, this bar, I'm gonna start calling it mana, does everything. Sending the dog, shoot dodging and keeping a human shield depletes the bar violently. While in Dead to Rights 1, only the shoot dodge consumed mana. In 2, you can instantly replenish with a disarm, but you can't do one right after another like in Splinter Cell Conviction. The reviewers grilled the game hard for this. In fact, it might even be one of the key reasons they hate this game so much. Anyway, it's a fantastic mechanic. First of all, let's address the misinformation. The shortest recording span between 2 disarms, ergo 2 full replenishes of the mana, is less than 10 seconds. All that is asked of you is that in those 10 plus seconds, you use your mana in the most efficient and entertaining way possible, and afterwards you find a way to disarm someone without losing too much health. Once again, if you liked Splinter Cell Conviction, which had its rehabilitation those last few years, this has the same loop of disarm, replenish mana, do cool kills, disarm again. Now, what I've seen in those reviews and long plays of the game is that people attempt to play it like the first one and do most of the killing at a distance with simple running and gunning, and only use mana after it's slowly replenished by itself, or they only incidentally disarm someone, once again probably being used to the first game's disarms being something you do out of extreme necessity rather than for pleasure and adrenaline enhancement. Looking at this footage, only one word comes to mind: brain rot, as the kids are saying. I have an extreme amount of sympathy for you if you experienced the game this way, since it's painful to even watch, let alone play. So let's do a summary. Dead to Rights 2 is a way more entertaining game if you 1. Change the controls so that every action is doable in the exact millisecond that it's most fitting. 2. Treat it like an arcade game, playable in short sessions, in a similar way that you only tolerate Max Payne 3. If you acknowledge it went harder towards the cinematic philosophy, you can only tolerate Dead to Rights 2 if you acknowledge it went harder in the opposite direction. And most importantly, 3. Adapt your playstyle. Now you need to be near the enemies instead of away from them, disarming a lot, and keeping in mind speed, clever cover use and resource management through killing as many people as possible, using your mana and knowing when to sacrifice health for mana and mana for health. And now I'm gonna add a 4th point: vary your moves. There are quite a few ways to get rid of enemies, and if you kill a whole group in the same manner, it's gonna get super boring in 5 minutes. Another point I can end the review, but because I am special in both senses of the word, the reason this review took a long time to write is that I went through 2 hours of footage 2 times to analyze my playstyle, and I did 2 lists of contextual choices that I made, one descriptive and one categorized, to showcase how smart this game actually is. And if I had fans, believe you me, I would have put it here in its entirety, but I don't, so I'm gonna go through the highlights. Disarming is best done on the first or last guy in a group for safety reasons, in order to always have a full mana ready for big groups. Another thing in common with Conviction, but unlike in Splinter Cell, doing it in the middle of a firefight is not completely impertinent. Granted, you close the distance by flanking, Metal Gear style, or simply by keeping a seize the moment mentality, and when incidentally finding yourself in the proximity of a guy, you unleash the chupacabra and follow it through with a shoot dodge. A more advanced tactic is the stagger disarm, keeping a guy in a stunlock loop by shooting him until you are close enough. You can also do it during a shoot dodge, just take care to not kill him. So, shoot dodging. We all did it in Max Payne as children, mostly because it's cool, but here it ties more into the mana economy. Long ass shoot dodges that deplete all the mana are only worth it when you have no health or are able to fall from a high place and can take out everybody, and afterwards you obviously disarm for mana. But most shoot dodges should be short, either with a high damage, high rate of fire gun and then finish immediately after firing the killing blow. The cousin of shoot dodge is rolling. No one rolls when they can shoot dodge, and then when they run out of shoot dodge juice, they bullet the sponges and wonder why they're miserable playing this. I almost get why. This is the only game where you can lock on an enemy after initiating a roll instead of having to lock on first. So they just assumed you can't roll and shoot at the same time and just didn't do it. I see the act of rolling as connective tissue for the other moves. You roll for a tactical retreat after a disarm, you roll to cover and then take your revenge with a shoot dodge, you roll into a health pack in a desperate scramble, or roll and shoot in a desperate scramble while low on mana and health. Overall, using it properly makes you feel like a professional, ignore the shrinking health bar that's from microplastics, while using it badly will make you feel like a circus attraction or die from a shot in the ass, just like the inciting incident in Mercenaries 2. Everything is connected. Speaking of connected, the other connective tissue is my nemesis, basic lock-on running and gunning. And my advice for you is rarely, if ever, kill an enemy just by running and gunning. It's borderline useless. Killing an enemy just by shooting takes an eternity. There are exceptions, like the silenced SMG or dual Uzis at close range, but they rarely happen. I am iterating this for the third time. Playing the game this way and complaining is like playing DMC with just the pistol. What basic shooting is for is servicing other maneuvers. Filling a guy with bullets while approaching another for disarming, killing a guy by half shooting and half shoot dodging and saving mana, crouching behind cover and stunlocking the only enemy that sees you while doing a war of attrition with 0 health and mana, a shotgun combo when you close the distance, or even a 2-for-1. Another connective tissue is cover-based shooting. Before third-person shooters turned into doing this all the time, you could actually choose when to enter cover. And here, it's good mostly for surveying. Like in a stealth game, this time around it's more about how will I kill these bastards in a cool way, rather than how do I avoid them. Another parallel with Splinter Cell Conviction. When you are forced to play Gears of War, it's tense as fuck, because there is no other option. You can't risk any other move, and there is no regenerating health. I want to add that crouching is useful when landing from a roll or shoot dodge behind a chest high cover. Now, the last piece of connective tissue is vaulting. The obvious uses are fast navigation, quick access to cover when in a tough spot, and cool factor. But the most interesting use is creating verticality when you pay attention to the level design, which can be used for longer shoot dodges that take out everyone. Anyway, connective tissue this, connective tissue that, what are we connecting? The 4 mana actions. The disarm, the shoot dodge, and the other 2. Taking a human shield should take as little time as possible. Either switch to shotgun and kill close range enemies, or just damage them a little for a shotgun close-up or shoot dodge. The other big use is after a disarm, when if you can't stay 10 seconds without touching a man, I don't judge, you can use the human shield mechanic for a short kill. The last mana activity is sending the dog. It's functionally similar to the first game, in that you enter cover and send him to do your
dirty work. Go, yeah!
Or you can even use him during a firefight if you followed my advice about key bindings. But the best use is combining it with a shoot dodge, a shoot dog as I call it. Here, let me show you the best shoot dog in shoot dog history.
Somebody kill him!
If they used this mechanic during trailers, I think it would have gone a little bit differently for this game. It could have been considered the best shoot dog game in history, kind of how Death Stranding is the best strength game. For a bonus round, you can kill enemies by locking onto the guy behind them. Why?
You're flexing! You're flexing.
Here is a guy with stealth game AI. Explosions don't affect human shields. Here is me normally, or me in real life after 3 minutes of editing. Any volunteers? It also seems that the code prioritizes disarms before the act of being dead. It makes this look like he used his last breath for a kill. Pretty based. This death reminds me of finding my uncle planking in front of the house, but suddenly laws of physics work when the corpse is big boned. Very fatphobic. Speaking of that, the fat-ass cameraman from Kane and Lynch 2 returns. Just look how faster he lands compared to Jack. In my Infernal review I did not even say protagonist's name. That's how gameplay focused I am. And that's it for the gameplay. I spoke 20 times as long about the mechanics than the haters, even though my review is about the same length. Because I actually paid attention to the game. And now, instead of playing the game like this, you can actually play like this.
Give me a take him out. Come here. Thanks for the help.
Plot twist. I don't know if you can tell, but I've been writing this for over 1 year. There are Oscar-winning movies that have been written in less time. What this means is that many times I'm just writing in spite of the fact that I haven't played the game in a few months, which meant that every 2 or 3 months I just start the game again to remind me if I actually like it. And guess what? The last time I was miserable. I was starting to wonder if the haters were right. Even with all I pondered and wrote in mind, the game was just so repetitive. It almost drove me to an existential crisis. Does anyone like working pointlessly? Double plot twist. After 10 minutes, it all came back to me and I was having a blast, which basically cements my point. On instinct, this game just doesn't have much to offer, and then your prejudices and safety mentality take over and there is nothing here for you. But if you pay more attention, it all comes together. So all I'm saying is, if you don't enjoy this game, you might not understand what gaming is about. Now let's see what criticisms I agree with, in case I gave you Dead to Rights 2 subreddit moderator vibes. You thought I was gonna start preaching about gaming or some fake deep shit? Well, take this as a triple plot twist, or at least 2.5. The beat 'em up parts aren't fun. Now you have no choice but to spam the same 3 moves. Remember what I said about Mercenaries? The weapon feedback has been lobotomized.
It's late!
But if it mattered that much, everybody would just hate Half-Life 2, Everything or Nothing would not be considered the best Bond game, and on the other hand, Killzone 2 and Modern Warfare 2 would be considered the best shooters ever. But they aren't, so gunplay feedback is not as important as you might think. And the story. It's really awful, I'm sure it disappointed many, but I prefer dumb fun to mediocrity.
Who the fuck is there?
Landshark. I'm Jack Slate, bitch.
Just shoot the fucking bad guys next time, okay?
Fuck!
Ruby told me that it would never work out because my life was a constant cycle of violence and death. I never listened to Ruby. And as I destroyed another useless object, it hit me. She was right. Always shoot the fucking bad guys first. Thanks, Ruby.
Jack Slate and his bitch are both dead.
It's absurd that all reviews have these long and self-serious segments dissecting the story, and many YouTubers do this with every action game. What the fuck happened? There are maybe 10 action games with a story worth discussing. Now scratch it at 5. On my deathbed, I will tell everyone how much I regret putting the story segment before gameplay in my Infernal review, and it is an Infernal review for that, but I still like it. I consider it this one's prequel, thematically. Watch it. 3 complaints, 1 I actually agree with, and 2 I still defend it.
Listen to yourself, you sound demented.
Maybe I am biased.